Hello, everyone. Welcome to another wonderful edition of Decoupled with Cheryl, the podcast on all things single parenting with a focus on being better, especially at raising the most amazing gifts ever, which are the children that we have been entrusted with. All right, this is another exciting edition because we're doing a HisStory this time around, but as opposed to previous episodes where we got to talk to single parents, this time around, we're talking to someone who grew up in a single parent household. All right. The conversation today promises to be very real, very open, very honest. And we would very, very much love for all you, our wonderful listeners, to make sure that you stay with us as we go through this very, very revealing story from our guests today. And remember to ask your questions, write them down if you must, and then send to us via our different platforms. All right, with me today on the podcast is Daniel Okosun, professional troublemaker, broadcaster, content creator, graphics designer. He's just a bundle of so many talents, everything put into one. Welcome to Decoupled with Cheryl, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. How you doing?
I'm amazing. Thank you for coming to talk to us today on the podcast.
Finally, I get to be on a podcast. It's a
Yes.
dream come
How does
true.
it feel? How does it feel?
Dream come true, my
Are you getting any
sister.
specific type of vibes?
Yeah, I think I want to do this more often.
That's good. That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that we are doing that for you.
Mm,
So it'd be nice. It'd be nice. You should totally start something of your own. We've had that conversation as well.
yes.
All right, welcome Daniel.
Thank you.
You're going to be telling us your story today.
Okay.
So there's not much of an intro I can give with regards to that, but we would like to hear what it was like for you, especially because this podcast is geared at raising wholesome, healthy children. When people say, "Oh, single parent," or "you grew up in a single parent home," the first word that comes to mind for many people is, "Oh, it was a dysfunctional upbringing he had or she had." So we want to just get a feel of what that was like for you, especially seeing as the word dysfunction is very easily thrown out.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what was it like? Let's hear your story.
So I was born in 1985, month of May to be precise. Um, in my own case, there wasn't any divorce that happened because they were not married in the first place. You had a man who met a woman who was very good with his words and was able to woo her to the point that she gave up her virginity and also believed that this was going to be the man she had been waiting for all her life.
Mm.
Fast forward the long story. The man does what he wants to do, gets my mother pregnant, and then insists in the fourth month that there be an abortion. Now, my mother thought it was a joke until she found herself in the hospital with the man and the receipt and all the necessary batting that she needed to get the abortion done. And when she saw that, she then realized that, okay, this guy wasn't joking after all. And the woman, being who she was, stormed out of the place and returned home. Now, he came to meet her at the time she was living in a Beach police barracks. I don't know how to explain it right now because it's so many years now. She was living there at the time. He came in, and then, men being men, all authoritative and stuff. Why wouldn't you go ahead with it? What is wrong with you? Yada, yada, yada. And then my mom burst out laughing. Now, the thing with my mother is, when she's angry and she's going haywire and running berserk and everything, it's really nothing. But when she begins to laugh, you'd rather just stand in front of a train and be run over than, face what my mother's going to do to you at that point in time. So she begins to laugh, and he thought, okay, yeah, I have this woman finally. And then in trying to put his arms around her, according to what she told me, she headbutts him, lifts him by his trousers over her head, out the door. Mind you, she lived on the third floor, and threw him down the balcony.
Oh wow.
Yeah. when she had done that was when she realized what she had done. Luckily for her, man lands face down. After a few seconds, he looks up and then begins to call my mother all sorts of names: witch, murderess, and every other thing that you can think of. The moment she saw that he was good, he was okay, he stood up, he dusted himself, and he walked away. She walked back into the house
Oh, wow.
and swore that she was going to raise the child by herself. Goes through the pregnancy process. She was working with a government organization whose name I will keep to myself right now. But she had to present a church member to act as the quote unquote husband, because of course there was the whole stigma of single motherhood, government policies and all of that. How are you pregnant without a husband and all of that? So fast forward to the day I was born. My dad had wanted to come and celebrate and everything. On the day he came with the woman he's presently married to. And my uncles, being of course also men, asked him why he was there. Had he not already decided that he wanted to terminate the baby? So why was he there? And he said he just wanted to see his first son and all of that. They let him in, he sees me, he turns, he walks away, and none of them see or hear from him again.
Whoa.
Okay,
Whoa.
yeah, so there you go. So about a year later, from this part of history, not back then, though, from this part of history, I hear that he had his first quote unquote official child with the other woman, which means they got married barely a month or two after my birth. I can't really place a finger on the date. So I grew up under my mother ever since I was born. My father had no hand whatsoever. When I say no hand, I mean not even a single cobble in my upbringing. There was no word of advice, there was no word of discipline, there was no show of affection, in the way that Nigerian fathers are known to do back in the days.
Which is minimal. Which is minimal.
Which is very, exactly. Yeah. Now you know how you said something about dysfunction just now? Back in the days, we knew nothing about the term dysfunction. If your child came out terrible, it was a result of demonic forces, etc., etc. But thankfully, the kind of woman my mother was, right from birth, she was, I'm going to use the term birth, but from a very young age, she had to be toughened up. Because unfortunately, she lost her mom during the Biafran War. Her neighbors, her father's neighbors, connived against the woman because she was becoming too wealthy and too powerful in Lokoja at the time, and she happened to be from the southeast. So they claimed that she was an informant to the Biafran army, so she was taken away and killed. So my mom had to learn how to be almost independent because she had 8 or 9 brothers and sisters ahead of her, and just the old man who was her father. So
your mom was also a single parent. She also grew up in a single parent household.
Grew up under a single father.
Right.
Yes. So, but in her own case, her mother was killed, just like I said. Now, when she grew up and got to the age that she was when she met my father, that she already had instilled in her discipline, consistency, all the whatnots that you can think of. Now, in raising me, she played both roles. Both roles. Father, mother. She plays the role of provider, protector, playmate, disciplinarian. What else? What do you call it now? Chef. All of that shtick. She goes through the whole process. But if there's anything that I can say is this: because of the manner in which she raised me, it was difficult to tell what a father was supposed to feel like.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna come in right there. You've said quite a lot, and a lot of your story just has me like jaw on the floor, right? Because,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about the tenacity that your mother had, first of all, in insisting
Yeah.
she was going to keep you. I mean, let's not
Yeah.
talk about the fact that she threw your father down the
Yeah. From the
building
third floor.
from
Yeah.
the third floor. Yeah.
That remains a
And
story for the days, man.
yes, I mean, her coming to herself afterwards, that must have been traumatic for her, like thinking, oh my God,
Yeah, it was.
I could
It
have
was.
killed him, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
we're just going to move on from there very slightly and just
Mm.
talk
Yeah.
about the fact that your father, just from the very beginning, insisted that he wasn't
Mm.
going to play any part. Now, I want to talk about how you felt growing up knowing that. First of all, when did you realize that your father just had decided, I don't want any part of you? When did you realize that?
So my mother was not known to
Mm.
pamper people. My mother was one to give it to you as real as it is. She would tell you if your mouth stank, she would tell you your mouth stinks. Go and brush. That's the kind of person she was. She didn't have the whole, do you need some bubble gum? Do you think you might want to chew some bubble gum? That wasn't her. But Benny, your mouth is smell. Go brush your teeth. So right from when I was 2 or 3, she had already started to tell me about the fact that my dad had left her
Okay.
and she had me alone. But she didn't say it. She didn't say it with bitterness or animosity or anything. She laid it to me
Straight.
straight and real. Like, yo, fam, you will see men in other families that people call daddy. You have one, but he's just not here. So you're going to have to brace yourself up. Anything it is that you know you're going to be going through, I have to know. You get.
Mm.
She would say this in the nice ways. She would also say this with a whip when I go, astray.
Mm.
Naturally, that's just who my mother was. So she already prepared my. Okay, this is how crazy it was. I think at the age of 9, no, at the age of 8, because my mom happened to remarry, or rather to get married, but to a polygamous man
Oh.
whose house she refused to live in because she was that independent. So she had to have a house of her own. So even the man she got married to, if I ever saw him in a year, it was like maybe twice in a year because she lived in Lagos and he lived in Abuja. Do you
Oh.
understand? So it was a weird situation. So basically, even the man who was supposedly my stepfather was most of the time absent because polygamy 1, 2, they were stationed in different places. Now, a lot of people have asked me, how is it that you don't have animosity towards your father? How is it that you're not angry at your father, you don't hate your father? And I say, it's because I actually don't know him.
Don't know him enough to even
Right?
accord him any sort of emotion or emotional
No,
response.
there is not know him exactly. There's not knowing him enough, and then there's not knowing him at all. Do you
Oh.
understand? And I am of the latter. I don't know him at all. Okay, so this is the much I can tell you about my dad. The first and only time I met my father was in Ibadan, and that was in 1989. I was 4 at the time. About a month prior to then, and this is going to sound really spooky, about a month prior to then, my mom she tells me, or rather she told me before she passed, unfortunately she passed in the year
I'm so sorry
2010,
to hear that.
that, thank you, that I had woken up one day and said to her that my dad was crying. And then she said, how do I know that that is my dad? And I said, because he told me so. And she said, where did you see him? And I said, I saw him in my sleep. And then she said, describe him. And when I was done describing the man, it was apparently somebody who looked like my father or whatever.
Okay.
So about a month later, I was on holidays in Ibadan. My mother's uncle at the time, who is also unfortunately late now, stayed in Ibadan. And when I went there for the holidays, about a week or 2 into the holidays, He now takes me with him and says, let's go somewhere. Yes, now this is one thing that helped my growth right from childhood. My mother used to send me on holidays every single holiday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just so that I didn't get too attached to her,
her.
so that I could learn to mix with people. Right from the age of 4, I was already going for holidays in different people's places till I was like 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 or so. At least one holiday, I would spend it away from her. So I learned that truth that she wasn't always going to be there right from a very young age. Matter of fact, there was a period when she was sick for about 3 or 4 months. She couldn't walk and all of that. When she came back home and she could finally walk and all of that, from that age, she was already preparing me that one day she would be gone. So I shouldn't just, relax on my oars and just expect everything will happen. But that's another side. That's another side, part of the story. So at my great uncle's place, we go to this military settlement. Let me use the term barracks or cantonment or whatever. We went there, and then the man places me in the waiting room.
Yeah.
And then next thing, the old man comes in. That's my great uncle. Comes in with this tall, slender military man. I remember very well what he was wearing. He was wearing his what you call it again? The regular uniform, not the camouflage. The other one. He was wearing it with a red beret, right? And it was a green beret. No, it was a red beret actually. And then when they both walk in, right, I could hear like 2 people had met just outside the door, greeting themselves. Hey, hi, what's going on? Da, 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 da. Then they walk in to the waiting room. And as they walk into the waiting room, the old man now calls me by a native name that he named me, which is Chukuma. He now says, Chuks. I said, sir. And I remember this as clearly as it was yesterday. I even remember what I was wearing. He now says, do you know this man? And I turn and look at the man and I'm like, hey, it's my daddy now. And then I continued playing with my throw pillows. And then I remember the guy turned to my great uncle and say, what is he talking about? Then my great uncle says to him, that's the boy you wanted aborted. That's him there. His name is Chukuma. And the man pulls off his beret, pulls it off, stares at me, and walks away.
For the second time.
Right? So that was the only time I ever saw my dad face to face. Yeah. That was the only time I saw. Yeah. That was the only time I got to see my dad face to face in my life. Other times I've been on pictures and he appears on television every now and then. So from that young age and that experience I had made me understand that, okay, this man doesn't really want me in his life. So, I got to that point of, like anything that wants to happen. And so when I returned to Lagos, I told my mom this story. And she didn't show me any emotions because I don't know what she was expecting. Well, I was a child at the time, but I don't know how she handled it. But she literally took that responsibility upon herself to take me through life from when I was born to when she passed when I was 25. That was like some 10 or so years ago. So that's basically what happened. There was no daddy presence, right? Mommy was daddy and mommy for me, basically.
Okay, I have to ask this because for you, especially like you said, back then, the word dysfunction never quite came up. But having grown into the man that you are right now, I want to ask because, this is a real fear for a lot of single parents out there.
Yeah.
You are a man, right? So what you had was a mother. But by all indications, your mother was a very strong-willed person. She was very firm. I want to believe that even when she took the decision to raise you by herself, she had the support of family. But first off, having grown
not
up
at
in a
first, not at first, because she had a couple of brothers who put her down, like literally put her down. There was talk of her being a prostitute. There was talk of her being loose. There was talk of her being irresponsible. Mind you, these are people who also had children out of wedlock. So the whole
But
the
she
whole
was a woman,
nonsense of patriarchal
which
society was playing out at the
exactly,
time. Yeah,
exactly,
that's what I'm saying.
exactly.
So the whole
Okay,
nonsense of the patriarchal society was playing out at the time. So it was basically one of them who, excuse my French, middle fingered the rest of them and said, if you people are not going to stand by this girl, I will stand by this girl. The rest of you can go to blazes.
thank God
Right? And he
for
happened to
that
be the
first.
youngest male
Oh,
in the family.
oh, okay, okay.
He happened to be the youngest male in the family. His name, Edward Musa Dentenijia. He's also late, sadly. That is the closest person I understand as, or that is the closest figure that I can connect to fatherhood in my life. Do you get? Because between the ages of 4 and 8, every single holiday was spent in his home. He
Right.
would literally leave, because we stayed in Lagos, he would literally leave Minna, Niger State, travel down to Lagos, come pick me up, then take me all the way back to Minna, because he had 5 kids. So in my mind, those were my brothers and sisters. Those were the people I called brother and sister at the time. Another thing that my mother used to help me understand the dynamics of family was this. She had quite a number of my cousins living with us because she was pretty much like the philanthropist of the family, right? So I had older cousins. I was always the youngest in the house. But the way my mother treated these older ones, at first I thought we were of the same, loins, right? Because their school fees came first, their Christmas clothes came first. If they were serving food, most of the time their meals would come first, just to ensure that nobody felt like they were being punished in the house. Do you get? So that's basically what but like I said, she was a strict disciplinarian. If you got out of line, she would whoop your behind back in line. And I wasn't even spared in that. I mean, I'm the child who started cooking stew at the age of 7.
Amazing.
Do you understand? My mother started making my mother insisted I start washing my clothes at the age of 5, 6. Like dude would be crying like then we carry cane and sit down with me there. You will wash that clothes. That was just who my mother
And
was.
she didn't do that
So talking
just
about
for
dysfunction.
you. She didn't do that just for you. It was something that she
No, that's
did,
just
for all the people that you grew up with.
Everybody.
Okay, so it wasn't a special treatment kind of thing. It was just who your mother was. Strong, determined, willing to push through, willing not to spare the rod and spoil the child and all of that. That's amazing. Okay, so you never ever got the sense of I could be better, if you had a father around. Did you ever get that sense at all?
Not for once.
At all.
Not
at any point
not for once.
Not once.
The only time that thing crept up in my head
Not even
was,
to the point of making you want to reach out to your father.
Nope. The only time I ever thought in my head like, oh my God, my father was never here. It's funny. I was 21 and I was in school, and because I studied medical science, human anatomy, so every now and then you're expected to dress up all spruced up and everything. And I had already worn everything I needed to wear, and I wanted to knot a tie, and I couldn't knot a tie. And so my friends who were around were like, you can't knot a tie, right? And then one of them literally stands up and he's knotting the tie for me. And for that singular moment, I felt emotional, like, yo, if I actually had a man in my life as a child, he must have taught me this. But then my spirit man said to me, self said, don't be foolish. And that was how it ended, right? Yeah. So no, I never felt that way. Matter of fact, my mother was the one who tried to make me find my father, because I had become too disconnected from that whole thought process of needing a father figure in my life.
Would you honestly say that disconnect was a rebellion?
No. Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Do you miss caviar?
I never tasted it. Couldn't possibly miss what I've never had.
Exactly.
Well, I could long for it.
The way she was
I
there.
could long for it. That's the difference. I could long for it. So it's not necessarily about
So how
missing
do you
it,
long
but I could
how do you
long
long for
for it.
something that you've never had or
Here's
had a
how.
taste of?
Because everything, or pretty much everything
Yeah.
around you, or a couple of things that you have seen
Mm-hmm.
around you, present to you the perception that life would
Yeah.
be better if once in a while you had
Yeah.
caviar. If I were speaking too much Turanchi, let's bring it home. Okay? So, um, oh my god, palm wine.
Yeah.
Like, do you hear how your heart beats, how your heart races when you think palm wine?
I,
You may
I,
have
I can I
never
can
had it
I can
before.
taste it because I've had it before.
You can taste it
I've
exactly.
had it
But
before.
no, I'm coming. I know you probably have. You
Okay.
probably have. But stay with me. Stay with me on this, Daniel. So your friends are telling you that there's this really natural, really nice local drink that when you take it, it's like you're one of the men.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I'm thinking palm wine, but I'm thinking palm wine. Let's just
Yeah.
roll
Okay.
with it.
Okay.
And though you've
Okay.
never had it before,
Mm-hmm.
but you've seen how they react when they
Mm-hmm.
take palm wine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about palm wine is in its most fermented
No.
term
Fresh.
state, because of course
Fresh from
the
the
concept of
stem.
acquired taste does not
Mm.
really you understand what I'm
Yes.
talking about.
Yes. Yes.
So you've seen how they get. It's not like they're inebriated. It's not like they lose control of their senses. I mean, you can take palm wine and still get that really nice buzz without losing your mind completely. So you see a couple of friends and you're like, okay, I definitely have to try that one day. Let's not stray too far from the topic because it's now looking like we're talking too much about this palm wine. But you get where I'm going with that analogy. You
Yes,
can
I am.
long for it,
Yeah.
you can long for it. I don't think it's out of place to want it. I mean, you've never driven an AMG before, but I mean, it's probably on your bucket list. So you get where I'm going with that, right? So let's
Yes,
come
I
back.
do.
Let's come back
But
to,
you see,
to the
here's the thing,
subject.
right? Here's the
Right.
thing, right? There is the longing for palm wine, right?
Uh-huh.
But I had tasted
Uh-huh.
grape. I had tasted fresh wine from the grape, from the grapevine. Do you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I'm not going to win this one, am
No, you're not. But you get where I'm coming from.
I? I understand you, Daniel. All right.
So that's basically it for me. I had friends who talked about their fathers. When we were having talks, they're telling me about things that their fathers have done, and I'm like, but mommy did that too. What the hell? Do you get? Mommy did that too. You're talking about, oh, my father took me out to drive. My man, my mother took me out like, Baba drive. I almost said as I got her. She hold the steering, tell me slap, say, you want to kill me? I'm like, but yeah, but I'm still letting, literally everything that they said they did with their dads, I did with my mom.
But here's the thing. Now, some people would raise this argument that there are things that a mother,
Yeah.
or there are places that a mother certainly cannot take
Mm-hmm.
in a child's life where a father is originally supposed to play. So it may not necessarily be that you felt like there was a lack somewhere, but I hear you talk about the fact that your mom at some point started trying to get you to reconnect with your father.
Yeah.
And I believe that she had a reason for doing that. So let's just tie that in with this talk about a woman cannot completely fill the place of a man in a child's life. Were there times
Mm-hmm.
when there were things that you just felt, I can't talk to mommy about? Okay. So how did you
Yeah.
handle those kinds of situations? I'm
Mm-hmm.
asking these questions because it's so important. When people use the word dysfunction, it's broad, but there is the emotional part, there is the behavioral part, there's the educational part. So I want us to cover all of these so that we know that if we're getting rid of the word dysfunction, we're getting rid of it. Do you understand
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So Cheryl, you're going to be pissed off at me.
Well, let's see.
Because I talked about every single thing. I repeat, every single thing with my mother. We were that close. Those things that I may not have been able to tell her was because we were not in the same environment. And then maybe by the time we see ourselves, I've forgotten about it, or I've spoken to a friend or two about it. Admittedly, there were some things that maybe because she lacked understanding about them, I got to learn from outside. Especially because of the kind of friends I had around me. And I want to thank God for the kind of people He placed as friends in my life. Yeah, especially in my university days. Because I had 3 very close friends. Now, these were 3 men who grew up with their fathers, were very close with their fathers. So I learned certain trends of manhood. Things like patience, right? The patience of struggle, going through, because we went through school together. It just happened to be that they were a year ahead of me, right? So I was able to see how they put their heads down and then get things done. You get, even though it took a long period of time to get to the point or get to the mark, I learned that from them. Being considerate and all of that, I learned that from my mom. I'm so sorry, but in
No,
this
you
in
don't
this
have
story,
to
this
be.
guy's
This is
story,
your story.
it was all, well, nickname Chu Baby. It was all Chu Baby. Do you understand? Then, of course, she made me go and stay with a lot of people who she trusted. So they also had their own effect on me. They also rubbed off on me. The thing is, the kind of people that she hung out with were almost like her.
I get that.
Do you understand? Yes. So that was basically it. Right from the age of 16. Okay, the one thing I know that I wasn't able to tell my mom was my, okay, let me put it in context. From the age of 16, my mother started the whole process of trying to get me to reunite with my father, and I was saying to her, there really is no need, because I don't see any need. At first, she wasn't being pushy about it, but after a period, 16, she does what she knows how to do best. I don't know how she did it, but she got my father's number, gave it to me to go call the man, and and when I did that, he literally says to me that he doesn't know who I am. I should not call this phone. I'm like, guy, okay. But he cuts the call. Then I send him a message and I say, my name is this. This was who you had a relationship with from so time to so time. This was the day of my birth. This was the hospital you wanted me aborted. This is the amount you paid. This was the letter you wrote on so and so day. This was what you used to call my mother. So I just thought it was necessary to let you know that I'm still alive and well, and my mom is the one who pushed me to do this. So when my mom finally died, I called him up again. That was 4 years after. Called him up and I said, okay, so hi, my name is so person. I'd like to talk to you. And then he literally says again, I don't know who you are. Don't call me. I'm like, he cuts the call. Then I send him a message and I'm like, blood, I just need you to understand something. I'm not trying to reunite with you. It's never been my intention, right? I just thought it was necessary for you to know that the person who gave birth to your firstborn son is no longer alive. Courtesy demands. But for you to do what you just did now, to pretend that you do not know who I am or who my mother is, makes you a coward in my eyes. So never ever you think that I did this to try to reunite with you. I did it out of courtesy. Have a nice day. That was 2010 till now. I've not bothered myself about it.
And he didn't respond to that last message?
No, he did not.
Okay. All right. We're going to move on because, it's not in my place to use certain terms to describe men who decide with such utter finality to not be a part of their children's lives. I have a word for them, but I'm not going to use that out of respect to you, because whether I like it or not, he is your father. But here's what I would say, just as we round up this episode. Your mom, God rest her soul, was an amazing person, and clearly just that spirit of hers, shone through, in all the time that she had to spend with you and raise you. And from everything you have said, I tried to dig and poke and check and just be sure that, there was no resentment harbored against your dad, and you made me understand in very clear terms that none of that was there. And that is a very key element, I think, that plays in why people would say that children that grow up in single parent homes are largely dysfunctional, because there is an element that consciously or unconsciously has come to play in their lives as lacking, and so they act out voluntarily or
Mm-hmm.
involuntarily from what we're made to understand. I talked about the three key areas, which is emotionally, behaviorally, and educationally, right? And from what you tell me, your mom did really
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
First of all, there is that thing about the bond between a mother and a son. I've mentioned that on previous episodes that as much
yeah,
as I treasure it, I worry that it might then play a role later on in future to probably disrupt what he may have going on with other people, other women who might come into his life. So, that's the thing that I
yeah,
worry about. I don't know if that ever
yeah.
happened with you, but it seems like you're pretty good yourself, and your mom has passed on. So there are elements also that you might have had to internalize and say, okay, she's no longer here, but I'm grown now, and this is how I'm going to deal with this and deal with that. But the role that she played in your life, raising you, clearly just still shines through, and you can
Very
see
true.
that. Thank God for the person that you've grown up to be. I mean, I don't even have any skeletons in
Like
your
they're
closet. I'm just
literally
speaking
my
based on what you just said
my closet is
on
very
this
available
interview
for anybody to
today.
come check. There are no
Like,
skeletons.
so other females might then have to assess you and say, okay, yeah, Daniel is definitely not a mama's boy, but just from your story alone, I'm so happy for the role that your mother played and the person that you become. As long as there are no resentments, as long as you were able to, even if it was by default, grow into this system of not even recognizing that there was a parent lacking, or there was a parent missing, or the influence of a parent was completely absent in your life, then I think it goes a long way to say that, yeah, we can rule out dysfunction. And this is for our listeners out there who, by whatever circumstance, found themselves as single parents. This is something that I personally struggle with, like thinking about the role of a man has to play in helping me raise my son. And man is not there. So what do? We move. So I'm learning from you today about the kind of person that your mother was. Some of us have different backgrounds, so we probably won't be able to emulate her 100%, but I definitely take learning points
Mm-hmm.
from that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, the fact that you had a stepfather and he didn't even feature in this story,
Yeah.
that is shocking. That is shocking. So your
So I
mother
think
clearly just took it and ran with it.
I
Wow.
think there was something I think there was something she realized that I would have no other figure to look up to. I think she realized that from early enough. And so she never was going to drop the ball. Never. Do you understand? She never would.
Hmm.
I mean, I said it earlier. From the age of 6, my mother was already preparing me for her death. That's weird. She didn't die till 19 years after. But by the time she passed on, I was ready, you know, I was ready to go it alone, if I would say that, even though for most
Hmm.
of the period I didn't really go it well as I would have wanted to. But she prepared me for her absence. The day she passed on, the first thing that came out from my mouth when I got home to gather my things, I looked up to my ceiling, because we always look up when we believe we want to talk to God. And I said, the person who you have put over me to be responsible for me is gone. It's your turn. Take over.
Hmm.
And when I got home and I saw people crying, not I was not broken. I was angry. Like, why are you guys crying? Will your tears bring her back?
That's a stage of grief. Yeah. So you need to understand that as
Well,
well.
yeah, but
Other people probably have reacted like that. I would
yeah,
have. But
because
you didn't even know her like I did. What's wrong with you? Stop pretending.
do you understand? So, like, why are you guys
Yes,
crying? But
exactly.
she
Mm.
basically prepared me for it. She let me understand one very important thing about life, and I use it till today. You are responsible for your own life. The way people behave should not affect who you are. She literally went through a lot of crap for the sake of family, for the sake of friends, for the sake of work, but none of those things changed who she was till the day she passed. So these things were things I grew up with and saw that helped me understand there will be pain, there will be disappointment, there will be reasons to give up, but always remember that the clock is still ticking, and if you decide to stay at after 11 when the time says after 5, you're not moving with it.
You get that?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Daniel. I think that's an amazing note to wrap up the conversation on today. Thank you for sharing your story with us. We're going to be getting more stories from different people. I've had a few people, just write in and they want to share. And we're going to be doing that so that we understand that there are varied aspects to these things and different people with different circumstances. But what we are trying to do is sort of like find a way to balance it all out. Okay. And from Daniel's story today, his mom was just really, really super at doing that. And, it has shown in the kind of man that you are today.
Thank you.
Now, another test of that, as people would say, is in how you raise your own family.
True.
Because some people will tell you that these things have a way of trickling down.
Yeah.
So my ex grew up in a, forgive me, but I'm going to use the word dysfunctional home, and he blamed one or the other of his parents for the way things turned out, and then voila, the cycle is sort of repeating itself. But then I take from what you say about you are responsible for your decisions, your actions, and all of that. But then let's just be sure that village people have not established the link between our past and our future. Yeah. Do you understand you understand what I'm saying? But thank you so much, Daniel. You have been amazing. Statistics say, as I round up, that 4% of children in Nigeria under the age of 18 live with one parent and no other adult. Percent might sound like a little to you, but in retrospect, that is a lot, especially when you consider the different ways that these children are being brought up. How do we make sure that our children are being raised wholesome, hearty, healthy, without any issues? That's what Decoupled with Cheryl is about. I look forward to seeing you guys on our next episode. Please do send us messages on our email, chercsts@gmail.com, and on Decoupled with Cheryl. We're everywhere on social media, including IG, Facebook, YouTube, and we will do the best we can. We're not know-it-alls here. Nope. We're just trying to do the best that we can and make sure that we all get better. I'll see you guys on our next episode. Thank you so much. Ta-da!